Hello and welcome back to the Creative Boom podcast. I'm Katie Cowan, and this week I'm joined by someone who's not only shaping the future of branding and creativity, but doing it with a load of optimism, curiosity and flair. Kiser Barnes is partner and chief creative officer at Red Antler in New York, where he helps build bold, imaginative futures for some of the world's biggest brands. From the metaverse to major exhibitions, Kiser's work sits at the intersection of storytelling, design and tech. And he's got a really refreshing take on what's possible when we let creativity lead. In this episode, we talk about the ever-changing relationship between technology and creativity and how to stay grounded while thinking big. We chat about the tension between excitement and skepticism in tech, why branding still matters more than ever, and what it means to be a creative optimist in a world that can often feel, well, a bit overwhelming. It's a thoughtful and energising conversation, plus a few laughs along the way. Kiser may or may not have a zombie apocalypse plan, for example, but you'll soon find out. Stay tuned. This season of the Creative Boom podcast is proudly sponsored by the School of Communication Arts, the most awarded ad school in the world. And now they've launched something truly exciting, SCA Online Portfolio. It's a new, fully online course designed to make creative education more inclusive, accessible, and flexible. Whether you're just starting out or switching careers, you'll learn how to build a jaw-dropping portfolio that opens doors, all guided by award-winning mentors from the creative industries. You'll get real briefs, live feedback, and support from a community that genuinely wants to see you thrive. And the best part, you can do it all remotely, at your own pace, from anywhere in the world. So if you've been dreaming of breaking into advertising or design, but didn't know where to start, this is your moment. Check out SCA Online Portfolio now at schoolcommunicationarts.com. And guess what? We're offering a £500 discount to our Creative Boom listeners. Just use the code BOOM500 at checkout. Kiser, it is so lovely to have you on the show. We've been trying to make this happen for a long time. Thanks for joining us first and foremost.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you. I've been such a fan of Creative Boom and all the amazing work that you do and the platform, and have followed it since I was a young kid running around the streets of New York City, and now I'm an old man. So it's a testament to all the cool stuff that you've been doing.
Oh my goodness. We normally just get straight into the conversation, but I thought with you, it has been a while since we started chatting about this. And, we turned 16, sweet 16 this July.
Incredible. That's so good. What are you doing for your sweet 16 birthday?
What's the celebration? Are you offering something? Are you going to get all of the creative community round to your office space?
I think we should.
Let's do it.
We should come and have a big party in London. Are you in London at the moment?
I'm up near Manchester, my love.
Oh, cool.
I can come down that way. I can be there. I'm going to the D&AD festival in May.
Oh, nice. Very
so
cool.
That'll be nice. Probably hopefully catch up with a few people. Are you going yourself or?
I'm not going to the D&D. No, I'm not going to that, but I will be I'll be in and around that area in June. I'm going to be at Cannes this year.
Nice.
Middle of June. And that's sort of like my big Europe trip, and I'll stop in London for a sec.
Awesome. I bet it's lovely coming across and doing stuff like that when you sort of, you just get, it's work still, but it probably feels like a bit of a break.
Yeah. I mean, Cannes is so, I'm sure you've been, but it's such a fun festival, and it's such a, beautiful place to be in general. But I'm going to be on the design jury this year, which is really exciting. And my first time on the design jury. I've been on the Young Lions jury in the past, but this is an exciting one to sort of be with my peers, and met all these really fascinating and really cool people from all over the world who are going to be on the jury as well. And, the opportunity to sort of define what the benchmark is for 2025 and the year to follow is a really cool and really exciting honor.
Yeah, I'd be planning outfits. I would.
I know. I got to get my fits done. I got to get my fits together. I was speaking to my fiance about that actually yesterday. I was like, well, you got to style me. She works in fashion. So I'm like, I think I'll have some help.
Oh, so your secret's
Yeah.
out. You see, if I'd gone to Cannes and seen you, I'd be like, oh, I'll never be that cool. I'll try, but I'll fail. And that's the
Secret
secret.
weapon.
You just got to
Secret
marry a
weapon.
fashion expert.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Now we know it all. So you are working literally at the kind of cornerstone of technology and creativity. And boy, are you having an exciting time at the moment. It must be equal parts terrifying and equal parts exciting, or I'm putting kind of words into your mouth. How does it feel at the moment to be working in this space?
Oh, it's so exciting. And it is also terrifying, right? Because I think we're all talking about this existential threat of AI to our industry and technology to our industry. But I think it's been such an interesting journey to be kind of on the ground floor of building new technology, new platforms, but also at Red Antler working with brands that are in the innovation space as well. So I think kind of our thing is working with some of the most innovative brands, but trying to do and combine that with the most innovative creative work as well. And we work with brands like AI robotics brands that are building, humanoid robots that are going to go into manufacturing and into homes to help the elderly. We're working on a brand that's a neural implant brand that basically inserts a neural device into your head that can monitor all the neurons and translate neurons into actions and thoughts and words. And for people who are paralyzed or people who have ALS and sort of medical disabilities, it's going to be incredibly transformative for their lives. So there's this kind of space that we're in now where the technology is advancing so far and so fast in the kind of virtual space around AI tools and generative tools. But I think what's really exciting for us to see is sort of the implication into the physical space, like how that technology then gets translated into things like neural, kind of Jedi mind tricks and being able to actually just communicate through a device without using any words or any kind of like physical kind of parts of yourself. And so I think we're getting into this really sort of fascinating hybrid space of what does it mean to connect the virtual to the physical. And I think that is such a new territory for us as like human beings, because we've kind of had this separation since the age of computers between the digital space and the physical space. And, I often say like this thing that we're working with is sort of a primitive two-dimensional device still, right? We're still like clicking buttons and, pressing things on a tiny phone. And so all of the work that I've been doing is like really trying to push into like merging those realms. And I think that's really, really exciting. And I think ultimately where we're headed with all this technology.
It's great. It sounds really positive and optimistic, but I'm afraid, Kaiser, I have a zombie apocalypse plan. So therefore, I have kind of a little bit of cynicism about all of this. When you've got like, these big tech companies making a lot of money out of these things, how can we trust that they will use them for good and not, not for bad?
Yeah, no, I think that's the sort of big debate at the moment is, who's controlling the technology, and ultimately, what does that mean, and what are the implications of people who control the technology? I think the good news is that the technology and most of this technology is becoming democratized. And I think just like the computer age, we often talk to our clients about becoming AI native and, kind of moving into new spaces in the same ways that people talked about being digitally native, right? But I think the democratization of this technology is really optimistic and really exciting in the sense that control will be in the hands of sort of everyone, hopefully. And I think that is where it's heading. I think, sort of with competition and through competition, it's not centralized. Like we have things that are being released in China and, different types of technology that are being released all over the world. And so that kind of levels the playing field, I think, and allows us all to have hopefully the power of these incredible tools. I'm a huge believer kind of in like this notion of optimism and how, we define the future through optimism. I think there's like two mindsets and two ways that people tell the story of the future. One's about fear, and it's sort of this like apocalyptic dystopia, where robots are running things and we're all of a sudden in the Terminator Matrix movies. And then I think there's like another side of it, which is like incredibly hopeful, and I think radically hopeful, where, robots become partners to humans. They help us become kind of, they help us, the elderly, they become maybe allies in dangerous jobs. And I think the role of creatives and designers in this sort of era of of innovation is really to tell that story of optimism, and use kind of our tools to tell a story around sort of the power of these tools through clarity and designing a future, that I think is ultimately inevitable. It's just really, what are the ways that we want to shape that future? And I think that's the most exciting part of my job, is like, how do I become like a voice in shaping that future? And how do I play a role? How do we all play a role as, I think, like optimistic creatives in shaping that future? And I think the more we can build a community around that, and the more of us are involved in the narrative of innovation and the tools of innovation, I think the better those outcomes become, right? And again, I think that goes back to my thing of decentralization, not having tools in one hand. And yeah, so I think that's my perspective, is how do we start to build community around optimism and decentralization and leveraging tools for good.
They started that same optimistic spirit with the internet and then social media, didn't they?
They did, and everything that's good comes with a little bit of bad, right? And I think that part of that is also like the perspective on tradition versus futurism. And I think the traditionalists will often say, everything was better before this, right? And I think the futurists will say everything's better, after this. And I think we're somewhere in the middle. And I think that's what kind of the present's about. It's about sort of embracing balance of kind of the good of everything that sits outside of technology, but also embracing technology as well.
Have you seen any of the Netflix Black Mirror series with Charlie Brooker?
I have, yeah. Those are definitely dystopian stories for sure.
It's a little bit too close to the bone, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
The latest one with Rashida Jones, I just thought that's interesting. I'm speaking to Kiser this week. I'll see what he thinks about that if he's watched it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of kind of how advertising sort of makes its way into everything we do in I think like sort of obtrusive ways, I think is a reality of like every generation of our growth, right? I think like, when the first people started driving down a highway and their view became obstructed by this gigantic billboard that said, like, I don't know what it would have said in the 50s, Colgate or something.
Yes.
Coca-Cola, maybe. I think they were probably pretty disappointed by that, like, intrusion, right? And I think as advertisers, we have to figure out ways to make advertising feel more integrated into people's lives. And I do think, though, we are getting, through the power of technology, to a place where advertising is becoming more organic and creativity and design shows up in more personalized ways. And I think actually technology is powering a space where we don't have to be fed sort of just the spill of everything, right? We can be fed things that are really relevant to us. You talked about social, like how are we fed kind of great creativity and like great ads that could respond to what I need. I don't think we've gotten it right yet, for sure. My iPhone's always listening in, and I always joke, because I work in advertising and in creative, I get so many ads because it's listening in, right? So I may be in a meeting and talking about like a woman's beauty line, and then I get ads for that beauty line, and I'm like,
allegedly,
I clearly am not
allegedly listening in.
Allegedly, right? Exactly. So it's just feeding me whatever it hears. I mean, I know it's listening in because it's like very obvious, right? Like I'm talking about something in a meeting, and then the next day I get something in my feed, and and I think it's not smart enough yet. And I hope that like we'll get to a space. And I think part of my thoughts around like sort of the future of this all is that it becomes a space that is completely personalized. And we talk a lot about this notion of an audience of one, which is essentially the idea that every brand shows up for individuals in a distinct way. So, the brand of Nike would show up for you in a completely different way than it would show up for me. That's already happening, but I think it will be accelerated to a space where the colors will be different. The fonts it uses will be different. It'll be ultra kind of designed, and it won't be sort of, as templated as it is now. And it'll speak to you specifically. It'll speak to Kiser specifically. And so I think that's actually, in a way, I do think, maybe to some that sounds dystopian, but I think that is actually an amazing place for creativity to play in. Because if I can speak to someone through the power of AI and through incredible kind of data, to understand who they are and actually have a personal conversation with them, I think that's ultimately like the best type of conversation. That's the conversation we all want to have. And I think that's a better place for brands to live in.
Yeah, it's all happening so fast, isn't it? I mean, isn't it kind of human nature, though, to try and avoid adverts as much as possible and just sort of move away from it, unless there's something of true value where you're quite happy to see those ads because you get something for free and you don't see the value in paying for that to be ad free. I mean, isn't it just in our nature to avoid?
I think it is. I think it's in our nature to avoid because, again, they're not personalized, right? So I'm just getting fed things that are not relevant to me. And so no one enjoys that experience, right? And I think we've tried to improve. We've done an incredible job on the creative side of telling great stories. So even if it's not relevant to you, at least you enjoy the story, right? And ads have become almost entertainment in some regard. And so I think what's really interesting is that we've done the job of storytelling at a mass level. But I do think when we get to a personal level, they will become things that you don't necessarily want to avoid because they're things that better your life. I think we're getting very close. Like, often we'll get things in my feed and I'm like, wow, like that's really interesting. I'm really curious about that product and I've, been curious and maybe gone down the rabbit hole and I'd love to get more information about it. And so I think we're getting to that space. I do think, there's definitely a balance of what do you shut off and what do you keep in. But I think the more personalized it gets, the better for consumers.
Definitely. And here's another question for you. With everything being AI influenced, is there more of a need now for authenticity, that word, than ever? Because how do I know if I'm looking at a beautiful picture of a beach on the television or in a brochure? How do I know that's real? So is that going to be sort of, something powerful that creatives can put to their clients who might be pushing for more of that kind of content specifically?
100%. I think there's two things and two ways I would think about that. The first is, I think that as sort of AI becomes more prevalent and shows up in more content overall, I think we always, as humans, and I think as creatives, want to find the differentiator. And I do think there's always sort of like a call and a response to sort of culture. And I do think that we'll get to a place where there'll be a backlash against AI generated content. And I do think the other part of this is that AI is innately sort of like built to systematize, and it's built to create patterns, right? And it's built to sort of replicate, right? And I do think that, we'll get to a space where we've got to start to figure out ways to differentiate from all that replication. And we talked a little bit about, I was talking to my team the other day about, kind of how do you give AI soul? How do you kind of leverage this tool and give it a human perspective? And I do think that is ultimately about, experimentation. I think that, ultimately when you have a system that is about systemization and like replication, it loses this sense of creative joy and experimentation. And I think eventually people go like, I'm tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. And they go like, I want to see something different. And so I think the backlash will be one, like you said, something that sits in the space of raw human creativity of just, people wanting to create things that are, and we saw this in the digital era, right? Like photographers going back to film, some of the biggest like, campaign, photographers in fashion and different sort of spaces are using film, right? And they have been for the past decade. And so there's always like a counterbalance to that work. we're seeing a lot of like this evolution back into sort of the, the early days of digital, kind of like Web 1.0 digital technology, of people going back and using like, Sony CyberShot U 2.0 megapixel cameras, that have horrible quality, right? And like they're embracing, again, like this sort of backlash to this picture perfect quality around content. And so I think there's going to be always this kind of, how do you insert soul and experimentation into the ways that we create things? It's sort of, I think that is the human spirit, right? And as AI sort of flattens things, we are going to intuitively, as human beings, find ways to create contrast, find ways to create differentiation in the process.
My defense, when I was looking at images on stock sites, before you untick and say, no, thank you, just show me the real stuff, was, the human brain is so powerful, it can just immediately spot something that's off. But the problem is, within such a very short time frame, I now look at those images and I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute, is that real? Is that actually real? I can't get over how quickly it's progressed in such a short amount of time. So that must be something that you're all kind of aware of constantly, and just it must be mind-boggling. Do you use a lot of the tools in your own creative studio, or is it more of a kind of, not for the final, I can imagine not for the final work, but for the process, everything else?
Yeah, we use a lot of the tools for the process work. We use a lot of AI tools to come up with ideas around visualization. I've worked across lots of different disciplines within design. So I'll give you an example. One of the disciplines of experiential, right, which is like, how do you design for the built environment? And we do some work in that space around retail spaces and activations, right? And it used to be that you would, the experiential process was so time intensive, because you would have to like create a mood board for direction. You would have to sort of, sketch it out, roughly. You would have to get a 3D designer to actually like build and comp the 3-dimensional space. And you would then have to, like go through multiple rounds of iterations and going back and forth. And it would take weeks, right? And what's spectacular, I think, in the process, in terms of process for AI, is that just the idea that now I can do that, with a simple prompt in like seconds, and gesturally define a direction, right, that combines mood boards, that combines sort of 3-dimensional space, that combines kind of concept overlays. And I can then take it into Photoshop, and we can take it into other tools to refine. But I think it accelerates the process so dramatically. And I think that's a really exciting thing, right? And I don't think that like it takes away from the, like ultimately from the creative output or the, the quality of the work. I think it improves the quality of the work, because you can ideate so much quicker. So that's the way we're using the tools now, is sort of in ideation, in concepting, and in process. We're not using a lot of the tools in final output. I don't think actually it's there yet. I hear what you're saying around like, you look at images and you go, is this real? Is it AI? I do think like in terms of high end, sort of photo production, video production, AI isn't there yet. It'll probably get there. It's advancing pretty rapidly. But I do think that, in the space of experimentation, space of process, it's a game changer. I often say, AI to me, and people look at it as like a thing that is going to, I think there's this fear, right? Is it going to take away some of these jobs? And it will, right? It will take away. If you think about sort of the production, I was talking to a friend, H&M just announced that they're using sort of digital twins for models. So they're going to have models who, license their likeness to H&M, and H&M will put their likeness through AI into like different backgrounds and scenes and put clothing on them. And they won't have to travel to like, Paris to shoot something. They won't have to travel to New York. They can just sort of like license their digital likeness to H&M. It really is an interesting concept. And I was thinking about it like big picture. And one of my buddies who does a lot of production goes, just think about the jobs that are lost, the stylists, right? Think about the lighting people, the people of production on set, that are doing these like jobs. So I think that is something we have to address as an industry, and just really consider like, what are the evolutions of that? I do think there'll be sort of digital versions of those people, right? And those roles. There will be like the AI stylist who like really thinks about the ways the clothes work on the model and those things, right? Because prompting and the AI tool will get you only so far. And I think like that experimentation, that sort of soul that like it really needs to make the product differentiated will still need to be there through the input of humans. So maybe those roles in my mind will evolve and they'll go into a space of, is there a guy, I'm working with this incredible AI artist, and he does things that I don't think anyone else can do with the tools. And the reason why he's so great is he's so great at lighting, for example, right? So if you think about the person on set who's thinking about the lighting and the styling of the shoot, those people are doing those, they're kind of evolving those roles into the digital space, and they're working on lighting with AI and really understanding light and how it works, and not just prompting at a basic level, but what's the experimentation within that module.
I think the people who will survive, whose jobs are at risk, will be the ones that embrace the tools. I really do.
Absolutely. I've got my team. I mean, we talk about this every day almost. And we talk about, I think you have to experiment. You've got to embrace the tools. I remember when I was younger, I discovered Photoshop, and that's what made me become a designer. Is I was like, I loved basketball as a teenager, and I grew up abroad, and I was growing up in the Middle East, and I'm American, but I grew up abroad. So I always had this sort of like affinity and loved basketball. And I loved the Nike ads at the time were so groundbreaking and so creative. And I remember discovering Photoshop in like a computer lab at school, and we were taking a tutorial. And I would go and I would take pictures of myself and my buddies and Photoshop ourselves into like, dunking modes because we couldn't dunk, and we do all these incredible things through the power of this technology. And I think a big part of how I got here, and I think a big part of this digital kind of evolution that we've had in design, is all about experimentation, right? It's the idea that if you can embrace the tools and experiment extensively with them, you will get to sort of unique answers and unique viewpoints and unique perspectives. And I think that's the thing that we encourage the teams to do, is just experiment, and try to find new ways of doing things.
This episode of Creative Boom Podcast is supported by the School of Communication Arts, the most awarded ad school in the world. Their brand new SCA online portfolio course is designed to help you break into the creative industry from anywhere. Work on real briefs, get mentored by top creatives, and build a standout portfolio, all from home. And right now you can get £500 off with the code BOOM500. To see just how powerful the SCA experience can be, we spoke to Yem Akingbade, a graduate of the online course who studied while raising her young daughter. She's won 2 D&AD pencils, launched her own fashion brand, and works as a creative at the And Partnership. We asked, how did SCA help you get to where you are now?
So if it wasn't for SCA, I would not have a career in advertising. So I think I was on my journey to being a fashion designer. I had my brand for about, I think at that time, 5 years. And I was trying to figure out how can I sell these clothes, but I had the skill of being a creative, but not knowing how to channel that into a career that could pay me. So I was on a course in Lambeth at the 198 Gallery. And it was all about, pursuing a creative career. So I was looking at a bit at my photography skills and graphic design and stuff. And then there was a guy called Tom Crosley that came to the school, connected with the school's teacher, and said, is there anyone here who'd be interested in advertising? And I was like, okay, sure, let me check out what this, advertising thing is about. It's obviously something creative. That's why they've asked the people on this course. Checked out SCA's website, and it looked really interesting, and it was actually local to me. I'm based in Brixton, and I thought, let's give it a go. Let's, go down to Portfolio Day and pitch for a place on this creative, crazy school that's promising a career in advertising, and to pursue, a creative journey with a salary attached. So that's how I started off coming across SCA.
Huge thanks to Yem for sharing her story. If you're ready to take your creativity to the next level, check out SCA Online Portfolio at schoolcommunicationarts.com and use code BOOM500 for £500 off your place. Going back to H&M and other fashion retailers, I can imagine that in future it won't be models that we'll see on the website. We'll just pop open, whatever, what's your favorite clothes shop? Put that onto your kind of browser, and it immediately puts up a 3D version of yourself in all of the clothes. So you're looking at a screen and there's like multiple pictures of you in various different outfits, and you'll be able to go, oh yeah, that suits me. Oh yeah, no, I don't suit the boxy, fashionable jackets that are at the moment. Damn. No, those kind of big baggy trousers don't work for my tall frame. That kind of thing. So you can see how it will evolve if that's the case. Do you think we'll have actors 5 years from now?
That's a great question. I think that, we will have, I think right now that the acting world is sort of resistant to, and I think for good reason, to sort of like the implications of technology. And, I think that's what the big strike was about, at least in the US, like at SAG and all these other organizations. And I think that some industries will be protected. And I think a lot of this will be about authenticity and people wanting, genuine sort of, human emotion, right? Or connection to that. I do think there will be a parallel industry that will evolve that'll be about kind of, it'll be a hybridization, I think, of gaming and film. And I think that we're already seeing that space evolve where, movies will be gamified, right? You'll be able to sort of go down different journeys and different paths. That is the incredible, I think, application of this, which is it's not just a linear sort of story. It's a story that's completely immersive and sort of, 4-dimensional in the sense that you can kind of navigate through different spaces. I worked on a lot of gaming experiences for brands, which was really about going, again, from a linear storytelling model for brands into a kind of gaming storytelling, model, which were about kind of incentives along the way, spikes of dopamine, sort of, curiosity, kind of, pursuit of things. And those narratives and those stories are, I think, very present in film. They're present in every sort of, kind of narrative around human storytelling. But I think they're multidimensional in those spaces. And I think the future of, putting on a show, being able to follow a character, maybe inserting yourself into the movie, as you said, like with shopping,
personalization,
which is already happening, right? Personalization, maybe making the story feel like you. I bought the Apple Vision Pro when it first came out. I don't know if you've tried the demo.
No, not at all. Was it good? You have fun?
So I bought the thing. I'm going to show you. It's sitting on my shelf and like collecting dust. But it was one of those things. I like to be like a first adopter. And I bought this thing and I was like, I'm going to buy it, And you have to do the demo because it's unbelievable. Like when you talk about storytelling, you put on this thing and you're completely immersed in this environment and you feel like there's this one demo with dinosaurs and the dinosaurs literally come up to you and you feel like you're in this world. It's 3-dimensional. And so I think that's where we're going, like with the power of AI. So when you talk about, will there be actors? I think there'll be digital sort of interpretations of these stories. And I don't think they'll follow the linear path. I think film will almost be like theater now, right? Like film will be this sort of like old-fashioned and storytelling platform that features humans, right? And is about a linear story. You follow from beginning to end. I think the future of that world will be about sort of an immersive space that you walk into. Anyway, the long story of like the Apple Vision thing is I bought it and I haven't used it once because there's no content for it yet. So it's like, we're literally there in terms of the technology, which is really exciting. I think this is part of the kind of back and forth of these things is we get there with the technology. Sometimes culture isn't there. Sometimes the application, the way it's created and the device doesn't work as perfectly. But I would encourage sort of, you and anyone listening to go check out the demos for for the Vision Pro. It's pretty transformative in terms of just thinking about storytelling and how you can work with brands in that space.
Yeah, the future of advertising. It's going to be. It's going to be Blade Runner-esque. You're going to walk past things and billboards will spark to life, and they'll be your very own kind of version of an ad. You'll see yourself in that ad, or are you sort of envision thinking up something completely different? Or do we not know what the future holds yet, Kiser? I mean, I'm hoping you've got all the answers.
I have all the answers and I have none of the answers. Is everything like what the future goes, right? I think you pointed to personalization. I think that's what we've been talking a lot about. I think, listen, like we don't know, as I said, we're working on this neural implant device, for example.
Whoa.
And if you think about the idea of even just walking through physical space, right? And the notion that, maybe we won't walk through physical space as much as we do now. They say the biggest risk in the future will actually be sort of, the risk to life, because human life will be extended so dramatically through technology, right? Most people will live much longer than they live now. So the risk, in the future may just be going outside. So who knows like what the world will look like. That's super dystopian. I definitely want to be outside in nature.
Yeah.
But I think, I think a lot of it in the future, from my perspective, will live in the mind and will live in devices that sort of circle us, as opposed to the traditional kind of idea of a billboard or walking past something in the world, because I think you'll spend a lot of your time. We already do. Like the funny thing about these conversations is people go, "Whoa, we're going to spend all our time in a like device," and I go, "We're literally."
How many hours do you spend staring at your phone?
What was your screen time last week? We're literally on our phones. Like I don't know. My screen time, I saw a pop up and it was like 7 hours a day, and I'm like, how is that even possible? Anyway,
Gosh.
so we're all in this space. I think we need a balance for sure. And I think, a big part of my conversations with creatives and my vision for sort of design, as well as, I don't think it's one dimensional. I think there'll be evolutions in technology, but I think it's also important to understand and to have exposure and influences and curiosity about everything else. And I think ultimately human connection is what drives all of this. So I think no matter what the technology or innovation is, if it doesn't have meaningful human connection, it fails. I think the Vision Pro is probably a good example of that. It's one device that you put on your head. You can experience these great things, but you can't experience them with anyone else. And I think that that's where technology fails. And I think that's where innovation fails. If it stops to fostering human connection, it is pointless, right? Ultimately, because I think that's what we're all here for. And that's what we all want.
So how do you look after your clients when they're wanting to reach audiences and be timeless, I guess? How do you sort of embrace all of this new stuff without kind of losing touch of that, like you say, human connection?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think we, as creatives and as brand builders, are at this space of really like needing to understand the foundations of, building incredible brands and building those brands around human connection, but also building a brand that can evolve. And I think that's what we talk to our clients about, is like we want to build incredible foundations. We want to make sure that the strategy is sound, the positioning is sound, so that we're connecting to the right kind of points of differentiation, the right ways of connections with people and your consumer. But we also want to make the brands flexible. I think the day of, when I was growing up, of like the big brand Bible that sort of sits on a shelf and collects dust like my Vision Pro, is like, those days are gone, right? Like every year you almost need to reinvent your brand, and not reinvent it necessarily, but evolve it. And so we think about like brands as always evolving, sort of living things in a way, as opposed to sort of the traditional model of, we're going to build you the perfect word mark and the perfect symbol and all these little bits and pieces that may or may not be relevant to consumers, right? Like the way a consumer interacts with your brand, I often liken it to like a Basquiat painting, right? Like it's not a singular thing. It's a mosaic, and it's a bunch of different things that sit within one sphere. And the ways that people interact with it, they may just see one tiny part of it that sits over in the left corner, which might be like your TikTok platform, right? Yeah. And that's the only thing they see. And when they're on TikTok, they may not even see you. They may not even encounter your logo, because your brand may be presented to them through influencers. So my point is brands need to sort of evolve, and they need to always be evolving, and they need to be built to sort of connect to different ways of and different platforms and different technologies. And so that's the way that we sort of like talk to our clients about brand building is, build the foundation, make sure we're like rooted in human connection, but also make sure that the brand has enough flexibility to continue to evolve. And I think our role as brand builders now isn't, again, this old-fashioned role of foundational people. It's that plus, like, how do we become your guide to the future? How do we become sort of your consultant, your trusted sort of advisor to kind of future evolutions of your brand? And how do we get you there in the smart ways and in the ways that are relevant for your consumer?
Are you upsetting other older, traditional studios in the space, Kiser, by being so innovative and forward-thinking?
I don't. That's a provocative question. I don't think we are. I think I honestly don't think about other agencies in the space. I think that I look to other agencies for incredible inspiration. I think that no matter what the work is, they're points of inspiration for me, at least as a creative. And I don't see it as, again, one dimensional. I think we are working on the things that we think are important and the innovation that we think is relevant to the types of brands we work on. But I think there are tons of brands that maybe, I always talk about this notion of like a boldness continuum in innovation. I think that brands sit in different spaces on this continuum, and some of them sit on the far left of boldness, and they don't need to innovate, right? They need to be, maybe even show up in more traditional ways. So I think there's a place for it all. And I do think that we are absolutely focused on one space, which is around some of the most innovative ideas. We work on a lot of startup brands who are coming, sort of to the world with innovation and with innovative ideas and with category of one sort of products and ideas. And so we need to kind of match them, with that thinking, and we need to also help guide them through kind of the opportunities in that space.
And because of that, you have to stay current. You have to keep up to date with everything, and try and avoid probably that creeping paranoia that there's these younger, more exciting agencies and creatives snapping at your heels. And you don't want to become the dinosaur that's looking at them and going, "Oh, look at them messing around with
Absolutely.
What is it? Immersive experiences. Oof. We're over here still working on this thing."
Yeah,
it's hard, isn't it?
We have to always be ahead. I think that's my passion. Listen, and I think that again, there's a space for everyone. I think that's the stuff that I'm passionate about. I'm super excited about change, and I'm really curious about change and the implications of change on culture, on human connection, and on brand connection. And I think that's always been a passion of mine. And I think that's why I'm living and playing in this space. I was saying earlier, I grew up abroad. My parents are American. But I was born in West Africa. I lived in the Middle East, and I've lived in New York City for 20 something years. And New York City is a city of change. It's sort of like every day you walk out into the streets and there's like a new style, and there's like someone's wearing a new fit, and you're like, wait, what? We're doing that now, or, there's a new neighborhood or a new cuisine to be discovered. And I think I'm just so passionate and excited about that space of evolution, and so I think that's what drives me. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I think it's just an internal driver, and I think that's exactly what we do at Red Antler as well. And I think that's what drives all of us here at the agency.
Brilliant. What are they all wearing in New York at the moment, Kiser?
What are they wearing in New York at the moment? Okay, I walked down the street today, and I walked past a couple of guys that had skirts on.
Nice.
That was really beautiful. Everyone's into like the ultra baggy jeans. Vintage stores are exploding. I don't know if that's the case over there across the pond, but a lot of like our younger kind of like the Gen Z kind of world is sitting in the space of like sustainability, going back to like really tried and true product, which is actually quite fascinating in this conversation as well, because it's a return to sort of traditional ways of commerce when it comes to fashion. I think that's really exciting. So Yeah, I see lines around the blocks for the vintage stores, which is, really fascinating because all the other stores are like empty. But everyone wants to kind of go back to some, to sort of sustainability and to really well-made product as well.
And to individuality, because look at what happened with
Individuality.
Instagram. Everybody started wearing the same stuff.
Absolutely. That's what it is, right? It's like, I don't want to have to get the same thing that everyone else is wearing. And I want to put together my own outfit and I want to be my creator. And I think it goes back to sort of some of the things we're saying. There's a backlash, right? It's like, it goes to a space where when we get to that space that you described, where you go to a store, you go online, e-commerce, and it's your picture and they're styling it for you, right? And it's just you, it'll still be formulaic, right? Like, they'll still have to pull from their catalog. They'll still have to pull from things that sit within that world. And they'll be styling similar outfits for other people, right? Because you'll sit within a subset of data that they're, focusing on. And so I think there will be a backlash to that. There'll be the kind of return to individuality, individualism, the idea that, like, I want to find things that no one else is wearing, that I can't get online.
Yeah. Have you read the book Walk Away, Cory Doctorow?
I have not. Tell me about it.
You might find that interesting. That sort of probably taps into what we're discussing this episode. Give it a whirl. It's a little bit out there, but I really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
Okay, so what are you most excited about in the next 2 to 3 years? And is there anything that's sort of really standing out that's, really kind of making you think, yes, this is amazing?
What am I excited about in the next 2 to 3 years? I think we've talked about a lot of the things I'm excited about. I think, these sort of immersive worlds of hybridization between digital and physical, I think is really exciting. That's something we haven't cracked yet as creatives and as storytellers. And I think we've played in different spaces with that. That's something I'm super excited about. I'm also excited to explore like what this backlash is going to be. I'm really also excited about lo-fi technology. We've been talking a lot in like our industry and like not our industry, in our agency specifically around how do we start to embrace some more lo-fi, low-tech ways of doing things that are actually like maybe better than the actual tech-powered, tools. I think an example of that is research, right? It's like, companies have gone and built like data sets around consumers, and then they plug that data into, things, and it gives them information. And so one of the things we're exploring is sort of like the lo-fi kind of model of just like getting back to conversations with real consumers and not using data, and really kind of drilling in smart ways, maybe powering it through sort of some tech tools, but getting back, I think, to some authenticity, I think is also quite interesting as a space. So I think like that's one thing I'm really excited about. So a lot of what we've talked about, which is a sort of the backlash to technology and to innovation and how we embrace that in smart ways. I think of innovation as like tech agnostic. So it doesn't really matter. I think it's about the ways that we approach the work in differentiated ways. And so if that like produces better outcomes in terms of human connection, as I said, I think innovation can be the opposite of technology, right? It can embrace other modes that are maybe more lo-fi.
Love it. The rebellion is coming.
The rebellion is coming. I think, I think the other thing is, speaking about rebellion, I think creativity is going to be a bit of a rebellion in like culture. And I think that's just broader culture, but I'm also excited about that. It like goes back to what I was saying earlier about this idea of people telling stories about fear and about optimism for the future. And I do think that creativity ultimately is really about optimism. And I think in our current culture, optimism is going to become counterculture, actually, because I think that like the prevalent culture and the dominant culture is now sort of fear-based thinking. And I think there's going to be a powerful role for creativity as part of the rebellion to sort of become a counter voice of optimism to our current environment. And that's something that I'm super, super excited over the next coming years, and to see how we start to use creativity to solve some of these like incredible problems that we're facing. Like, AI is a Pandora's box, right? We've opened this Pandora's box. We don't know what's going to happen. Like, I can pontificate, I can talk about my thoughts, but like none of us really know what's going to happen with AI, right? Like that's the great kind of joy of this conversation. I think the other Pandora's box is global warming, right? We've accelerated consumerism to the point where we have unleashed this sort of warming of the planet, and we're going to have to figure out collectively as human beings how to solve that problem. And I think looking forward to a space where we can leverage optimism to do that collectively as creatives. And I think creatives, in my mind, are key to that sort of counterculture and that rebellion.
I think it's like we've been on the waltzers for far too long and we're feeling really dizzy and we just want to get off and stand on some solid ground.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're ready. We are ready for some solid ground.
We're ready for a change. I'm looking forward to some, fight back. It'll be a really interesting end to the decade, which has been a tumultuous time, without doubt.
Absolutely. I was expecting this to be a design conversation, and I feel like we got very philosophical, which is like really exciting as well. And thank you so much for pushing us into this space. This is very cool.
I can't help myself. I'm married to a software developer. We have some really interesting conversations at the dinner table. So
I love it.
Thanks for putting up with me.
No,
it's been
perfect.
Lovely chatting with you.
It's perfect.
That was Kiser Barnes, partner and chief creative officer at Red Antler in New York City. What a brilliant conversation. So many insights, so much to think about, and a good few laughs along the way, but we're not quite done yet. If you want to hear more from Kiser, like who his creative nemesis is, his most controversial opinion about the industry, and which animal he'd love to be, then stay tuned for The Spark, our fun little bonus round out every Thursday. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, or just head to creativeboom.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on Thursday. Big thanks to the School of Communication Arts for sponsoring this season of the Creative Boom podcast. Don't forget their brand new SCA online portfolio course is now live. It's the perfect way to break into the creative industries from wherever you are. Real briefs, top mentors, one incredible opportunity. Visit schoolcommunicationarts.com to find out more. And to enjoy £500 off the price of the course, use our special code BOOM500 at checkout.